Hey everyone, it's Sarah with RegisteredNurseRN.com, and in this video I'm going to go over how to solve body surface area calculations. And as always, whenever you get done watching this YouTube video, you can access the free quiz that will give you more practice on these calculations. So let's get started. Body surface area calculations allow us to calculate the most accurate dosage for a patient. So they're really good for pediatric patients and for patients who are going to be receiving like really strong medications such as chemo agents. Now, body surface area is expressed in square meters, so it's an M with a little 2 up there hanging out on the side. And to calculate body surface area, we need to know the patient's height and their weight. Now, in our previous dosage and calculations reviews, we just really cared about the weight, but now we want to know that height. And so to figure out body surface area, one way you could calculate a patient's BSA would be to look at a nonogram, which is like a diagram that helps you do that. Or you can use some formulas to help you solve it, which is what this video is going to be focusing on. So to help you solve these calculations, you really need to commit to memory these 3 different formulas, and you'll be using certain formulas based on what the scenario has given you and it's what it's asking you. So let's look at these formulas. So whenever calculating body surface area, there are 2 main formulas that you will potentially use, and it depends on what that scenario is giving you. So for instance, you're going to look at the height and the weight in that scenario, and you're going to need to determine, is this based on the metric system or the household system? So that first formula on your screen, this would be the formula you would use to solve body surface area if they were giving it to you in the metric system. So if they were giving you the patient's weight in kilograms and the patient's height in centimeters, you would use this formula. So this formula says square meter, which is body surface area, equals weight in kilograms times the height in centimeters divided by 3,600. You would figure that out and then calculate the square root of that value. Now, if the scenario was giving you the household system where the patient's weight is in pounds and the height is in inches, you would use the second formula, which again is square meter, which is body surface area, equals weight in pounds times the height in inches divided by 3,131. So don't let those values get you mixed up. Memorize which one goes with each. So you would figure that out and then find its square root. Now, another formula you want to commit to memory deals with how to solve for the child's dose. And this will be required of you whenever the scenario is asking you to either solve for the child's body surface area, or they've given you that number, and then they'll also give you the normal adult dose for that specific medication that's ordered for that patient. So to do that, you want to use this formula. And what we're solving for is a child's dose. So child's dose equals the child's body surface area. Again, they will either give this to you or you'll have to calculate that out by using one of the formulas above that we just went over. And then you'll divide that by 1.73 square meter. And this 1.73 is the average adult body surface area. Now, some programs may use 1.7 as your number. Some may use 1.73, just use whatever they give you, but whatever, you're going to get the same answer. And then you're going to divide that, and then once you divide that, you'll multiply that by the normal adult dose that was given to you in the scenario, and then that will give you your answer for the child's dose. Now let's solve some different types of scenarios you may encounter on exams that require you to solve for body surface area. So before you do that, of course, you need to have these formulas memorized because that's the key to solving these problems. Second, you need a calculator that is going to solve the square root of values. And then third, you need to make sure you're following the rounding rules set by your program because they may round a little bit differently than how I will round in this video. So always double check. So our first problem says your patient weighs 163 pounds and is 5 feet 7 inches. What is the patient's body surface area? So we need to pull from this scenario the most important information we need to solve this problem. So we know that the height and the weight is very important when solving body surface area. But which formula are we going to use? The metric, system formula or the household? Well, they gave us the patient's weight in pounds and the height in inches. So we're going to use the household system formula, which is this formula, because the scenario gave us the patient's weight in pounds and their height in inches. But before we can actually use this scenario, we need to deal with this height, because they tell us the patient's height is 5 feet 7 inches. So we need all of that in inches. So to help us do that, we're going to use a little bit of dimensional analysis. So the patient is 5 feet, and we know that in 1 foot, there's 12 inches. And this calculates out the feet, foot, and we're going to multiply everything at the top and everything at the bottom and then divide. So 5 times 12 is 60. 1 times 1 is 1, and that converts to 60 inches. Now, the patient still is a little bit taller than that. They're 7 inches. So we're going to just simply add that leftover inch up there. So 7 inches. 60 plus 7 is 67. So our patient is 67 inches total. Now we are ready to use our formula. So our formula, square meter, which is body surface area, and I'm just going to write that right here so you can see it, equals the patient's weight times the height. So their weight is 163 pounds times 67 inches. And then we are going to divide that by 3,131. And again, don't get that confused with the other formula. That's the key with it. So we're going to divide that by 3,131. Make sure you keep your square root because we do that at the end. So 163 times 67 gives us 10,921. And then we're going to divide that by 3,131. And whenever we do that, we get 3.4880. And we still need to figure out the square root. So the square root of 3.4880 is 1.8676. Now we're going to round to the nearest hundredth, and again, follow your program's rules for that. So you get 1.87 square meters, and that is the patient's body surface area. Our next problem says your patient weighs 27.2 kilograms and is 91 centimeters. What is the patient's body surface area? So you want to pull the most important information out of the scenario to help you solve. So of course the patient's weight is important and their height. So this problem specifically gives the patient's weight in kilograms and their height in centimeters. So we're going to use the metric system formula to look at that body surface area. So we're going to use this formula right here. So let's go ahead and plug in. Everything's ready for us to go. We don't have to convert anything like we did before with the 5 feet 7 inches. So our formula says square meter, which again is the body surface area that we're trying to calculate, equals the weight times the height, and kilograms times centimeters. So 27.2 times 91, and we're actually going to be dividing that out by 3,600. So we're going to put 3,600 down here, and then whenever we're done with that, we have to figure out the square root. So 27.2 times 91 gives us 2,475.2, and we're going to divide that out by 3,600. And whenever you divide that, you get 0.6875 repeating. Now we need to figure out the square root of that. So the square root of that number is 0.82918, and we're going to round to the nearest hundredth, and that gives us 0.82918. 0.83 square meters, and that is the patient's body surface area. Our next problem says a pediatric patient is ordered a medication dose of 10 milligrams per square meter per day by mouth for 7 days. The patient weighs 46 pounds and is 3 feet 9 inches. What is the daily dose of medication the patient will receive? So to solve this problem, we need to pick out the important information we need to know to actually solve what the problem is asking for. So the problem wants to know the daily dose of medication the patient will receive. So to solve for that, we need to know what the physician ordered. The physician ordered 10 milligrams per square meter per day. That's important. Now for 7 days, that's just really a distractor. So we know the patient's going to be getting this for 7 days, but the problem wants to know the daily dose. And because this medication is expressed in square meter, this is a body surface area calculation. So we need to know the patient's height and weight, and they give us the patient's weight in pounds and their height in inches. So we're going to use that household system formula. And again, the formula looks like this. But before we can start with that formula, we have to deal with the 3 feet 9 inches because we need all of that in inches. And to do that, we're going to do some dimensional analysis. So we know the patient is 3 feet. And again, there's in 1 foot, there's 12 inches. Feet cancels out. And multiply everything at the top and everything at the bottom. So 3 times 12 is 36. And then 1 times 1 is 1. So we get 36 inches, but we know that they're left over some 9 inches in their height. So we're going to add 9 inches to that, 45 inches. So our patient's height overall is 45 inches. Now we are ready for that formula. So this is a 2-step formula. First, you have to solve for the patient's body surface area. Then, whenever we get the body surface area, we can use this part, which is the dose ordered, to solve for what the daily dose is going to be. So first step, body surface area. So we know using this formula, square meter, again, that is the body surface area that we're solving for, equals the weight times the height. So our patient is 46 pounds times 45 inches. And we're going to divide that by, what is that number? 3,131. And then once we do that, we have to get the square root. Always remember to carry your square root over. So 46 times 45 is 2,070. And when you divide that out, we're going to divide that by 3,131. When we divide that, that gives us 0.6611. Again, we got to find the square root of that because we are almost there to find our body surface area. So the square root of 0.6611 is 0.81309. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So our patient's body surface area is 0.81 square meter. Now we have that. Now we need to solve for the daily dose. So our daily dose says for every square meter of body surface area that patient is, they're going to receive 10 milligrams per day. So to set up our problem, we're first going to start with our body surface area, and this is where we use dimensional analysis. If you're not familiar with dimensional analysis, I have a whole review on how to set these problems up. It makes it simple. So our body surface area is 0.81 square meter over 1 times the dose that's ordered. And again, it says for every square meter that patient is, that cancels out our square meter, the physician has ordered 10 milligrams per day. So we're going to multiply everything at the top, everything at the bottom, and then divide. So 0.81 times 10 gives us 8.1. Then 1 times 1 is 1. And then when you divide that out, you get 8.1 milligrams per day. And that is our daily dose for this patient. Our next problem says a pediatric patient is 65 pounds and 4 feet 5 inches. The physician orders an oral medication that has a normal adult dose of 250 milligrams. How many milligrams of this medication will be administered? So again, to solve this problem, we need to pick out that important information. And this problem wants to know how many milligrams of this medication will be administered. And notice in this scenario, it gave you the normal adult dose of that particular medication. So we know we're going to be using that formula that helps us calculate that child's dose. But in order to use that formula, we have to figure out the child's body surface area. So what do we need to figure out body surface area? We need the height and the weight. So we know that our patient's 65 pounds and they're 4 feet 5 inches. That's very important. And that allows us to know that we're going to use that household formula to calculate that body surface area. So we're going to be using this formula and this formula to help us get this answer. So the very first thing we have to do is we have to calculate the patient's body surface area. Then whenever we get that number, we will plug it into this formula and it will give us the child's dose in milligrams. So to use this formula, we are going to have to do a little bit with this 4 feet 5 inches because we need it all in inches. So we're going to use some dimensional analysis. So 4 feet, that's how much our patient is in height. And we know that there's 1 in 1 foot, there's 12 inches. Cancels out the feet. So 4 times 12 is 48. And 1 times 1 is 1. So they are 48 inches, but they're also 4 feet 5 inches. So we have 5 left over. So 48 plus 5 inches equals 53 inches. So this patient is a total of 53 inches. We are now ready to use our body surface area formula to solve for it. So we know that this formula says square meter, that's our body surface area, equals the weight times the height. So 65 times 53 inches divided by that special little number, which is 3,131. And whenever we do that, we're going to calculate our square root. So we're going to multiply the things at the top. So 65 times 53 gives us 3,445. And we're going to divide that out by 3,131. And whenever we do that, that gives us 1.1003. And we got to get the square root of that. So the square root of this number is 1.048. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So we get 1.05 square meter. And that is our patient's body surface area. So we have that. Now we need to go to the other step of this problem, which is using this formula right here. So we're trying to figure out the child's dose. So let's set it up. So the child's dose equals the child's body surface area, which we calculated to be 1.05 square meters. Now that's that special number you just need to memorize, the average adult body surface area, 1.73 square meters. So 1.73 square meters. And then that's going to cancel out. We're going to divide that, and then we're going to multiply that by the normal adult dose. So we'll go ahead and add that real fast. And what was our normal adult dose? That scenario told us 250 milligrams. So 1.05 divided by 1.73 gives us 0.6069, and we're going to multiply that by 250 milligrams. And whenever you multiply that out, you get 151.725, and we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So we get 151.73 milligrams. And that is the child's dose for this medication based on their body surface area. Our next problem says a pediatric patient has a body surface area of 0.88 square meter. The physician orders an IV medication that has a normal adult dose of 125 milligrams. You're supplied with a vial that reads 30 milligrams per ml. How many milliliters, will you administer to this patient? So to solve this problem, we need to know that important information and what we're solving for. So the question wants us to solve how many milliliters we're going to administer to this patient. So it tells us that we have a vial that says for every milliliter there's 30 milligrams in it. Now, the problem also tells us that the specific IV medication that the physician is ordering has a normal adult dose of 125 milligrams. So that right there tells us we're going to be trying to figure out the child's dose based on the child's body surface area. So we're going to be using that formula for child's dose. And luckily, we don't have to solve for body surface area. The problem already tells us, so that takes a step out. So this problem is a two-step problem. We're going to use this formula here to figure out the child's dose. Luckily, we don't have to figure out the body surface area that is already given to us. And then we have to take what we've calculated with this child's dose and plug it into solving for how many milliliters we're going to administer based on what we're supplied with. We have a vial that says for every ml you're drawing up, there's 30 milligrams in it. So we're going to see how many mLs we actually have to draw up based on that child's dose. So let's solve for the child's dose. So that formula says child's dose equals the child's body surface area, which is 0.88 square meter. And we divide that by the average adult body surface area, and you're just going to have to memorize that number, which is 1.73 square meter. And then whenever we divide that out, we're going to multiply by that normal adult dose, which the problem tells us is 125 milligrams. So let's go ahead and do that. So 0.88 divided by 1.73 gives us 0.5087. That cancels out the square meter. And then we're going to multiply this number by 125 milligrams. And this is going to give us the child dose. So 0.5087 times 125, that gives us 63.5875. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. That gives us 63.59 milligrams. So this is the child dose. It's how much this child needs. Now we have this vial. This is where the second step of our problem comes in. So since this is our dose, we need to see how much we need to draw up. So to do that, we're going to use some dimensional analysis. So our child dose is 63.59 milligrams. That's how much they need. Our vial says that 30 milligrams in that vial is equal to 1 milliliter. That cancels out milligrams. We're left with just milliliters, and we're ready to solve. Multiply everything at the top, everything at the bottom, and then divide. So 63.59 times 1 is 63.59. And then 1 times 30 is 30. And then when you divide that out, you get 2.11966 repeating. And then we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to get 2.1 mLs is how much we're going to draw up and administer to this patient. Okay, so that wraps up this video over body surface area calculations. And don't forget to access the free quiz that will give you more practice on these calculations and to check out the other review videos in this series.